Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today I wanted to do a video that I did last year, and I figured that we need to do it again. And that is, of course, the top 5 biggest disappointments from the previous UFL season, this time the 2025 season. Now, last year was a bit different from this year in terms of disappointments. While there obviously were still disappointments in both seasons, last year there was a lot more team-specific, on-the-field type of disappointments. This year, there still were a couple big ones, and there's a couple of ones that just missed out on this list. There's also a lot that weren't necessarily on the 100-yard field, but were on kind of the sideline of the field, in the stands, other areas. Let's just say the disappointments more varied this season than last year, making it a pretty interesting list, as a team like the Renegades just barely missed out on this list, mainly because, while yes, they were disappointing for how many games they choked away, at the same time, they've been doing that for, 3 straight years now. So am I really going to look at them and be like, they're a bigger disappointment than another team that was actually expected to do well and really didn't? No. So there were a couple that just barely missed out on the list. Without further ado, let's get started with number 5, coaching dilemmas. Now, this one of them we'll talk about more in depth later, and that is the Brahmas situation. TLDR about it is Wade Phillips was essentially really never with the team. He showed up for like a couple of games, not fully, had health issues, ended up stepping away from the team, and Peyton Pardee became the interim head coach. AJ Smith resigned. A lot of people believing it was because he wasn't given the head coaching opportunity. Others say it was other reasons. Again, we'll talk about that later. And then obviously the Defenders and Schobels also had head coaching issues. Now the dilemma is not just because of the fact that obviously the coaches left, but who was put in place. Again, the Brahmas, at the time, it was viewed very shocking that it was not AJ Smith becoming head coach. As for the Showboats, a lot of people expected it to be Jaron Horton. Instead, it was Jim Turner. And they would bring in Noah Mazzone, which you would think he would have gotten that gig if he was brought in, but instead it was still Jim Turner. Then the Defenders. We all thought it was going to be Greg Williams. Then we all heard that Fred Case was supposed to get it, and then instead it was Shannon Harris. So in terms of who was picked, at the time was a very big deal and was like a whoa. Now, in hindsight, obviously Shannon Harris worked out really well. I know some people want to say their own things. Bottom line, he's become head coach of the year, despite being interim, and is now the official head coach, and is going to be double dipping in coaching in both, obviously, Tennessee State as well as the UFL next season. Now, when it comes to the Reggie Barlow stuff, that is still a disappointment. Because of when he left the Defenders for the job, it looked really bad. Now, if this has happened during the offseason, it actually looks good for the league. It's showing the league works for coaches. He was able to parlay his success in the XFL and UFL, even though the UFL didn't really have success at the time, but XFL success to then get a D1 college gig. Instead of being viewed as a good thing, it was, wow, he just left his team a week before the season. That's a low move. That looks bad for the league. And then, obviously, when Ken Wisenhunt left, he was a big deal because that team was built mainly on an offensive coach in Wisenhunt and a defensive coach in Horton. And now your offensive side of the ball, which ended up being a massive disappointment during the season, took a massive hit because the guy that was supposed to be running it was basically not there aside from like the 1 or 2 games he was there before he ended up leaving. Because he left, came back, and then left again, just like Wade did. So, not the greatest overall look in that front either, which again was a massive disappointment. The Brahmas, we'll talk about that more later, though the coaching dilemma still has to be here for them. Wade Phillips being gone made that defense just crumble. Huge deal him not being there. When Reggie Barlow left, it ended up making a really bad look for the league, and then the Ken Wisenhunt situation was bad as well. That's not even talking about Greg Williams leaving during the season as well to go to Tennessee State instead of waiting because of the fact that he was a defensive guy. So another bad look. The overall head coaching dilemmas was definitely a disappointment for the season. Not the worst, is why it's at number 5, but definitely need to be on here. Number 4 is the Stallions QB room health. Is it really justifiable to put health as a disappointment? I think so. When talking about disappointment, it's something that you were expecting to do well, be fun, that either sucked or wasn't fun. And this QB room definitely fits it. The QB room's health was just awful. I mean, it was so disappointing because multiple guys we really were excited to see play didn't. Alex Magoo played one horrible game in DC, then played like a snap in week 2 and was done. Matt Corral came and looked really good, and then a couple weeks later, got hurt. Andrew Peasley barely played, got hurt. Case Cookus came in, played a bit, got hurt. Now, they were differing levels of injury. Magoo was really bad. Corral was bad, but not season-ending. Cookus wasn't the worst. Neither was like Peasley fully. but they never got a healthy QB room. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say the Stallions as a team were disappointing when a lot of the reason they weren't as good as they were in years past was because of this QB room health. You never got that whole quarterback gig going. It's not like 2022 where obviously had Magoo go down and then Jamar took the reins and then kept going. Or the next year when the roles were flipped and Jamar went down and then Magoo took the reins for the whole season. Or even 2024, which after a few weeks, they were like, okay, Martinez is our guy and then we'll put Corral in as, a relief quarterback when, the starter's not playing well, and then have it work like that. They never got a real rhythm. And even though Jamar did get a decent one going at the end, mismanagement in the playoff game ended up costing him. Overall, though, the Stallions QB room health definitely deserves to be on here. Because this QB room, just point blank, in a vacuum, is one of the best we've seen in this era of spring football. In the ultramodern era of spring football, there's a very real argument this was the best by far. Talking about a former dominant MVP in Alex Magoo, a guy that was a huge reason the Stallions won the championship in 2024, Matt Corral. Jamar Smith, who was MVP caliber before he got sick back in 2022. And Case Cookus as your fourth stringer, well, technically third stringer at the time, who, again, was a guy that was really damn good in 2022, and even in 23, aside from the O-line. And to see them just deal with injury after injury after injury was just really rough to see. Definitely deserves to be on this list. Now, number 3 is the Battlehawks dual threat QB room. Yeah, you knew this one wasn't skipping the list. The top 3, to me, are very obvious and are the 3 that you cannot change in my book. And by that, I mean you can't not have them on the list. Granted, I think the overall ranking still is pretty set in stone, though. I could see an argument for 3 and 2 to change. But this is a big one. I talked about it in the What If video that came out a couple weeks ago, but I'll run it down again. The decision to move on from A.J. McCarron was not due to A.J. being a bad quarterback or a good quarterback. It was due to him not being a dual-threat quarterback. They wanted a dual-threat quarterback because that supposedly would be better for a league like this. They had 3 quarterbacks that played significant snaps. One of them was a pocket passer. Take a wild guess who the best quarterback was. Brandon Silvers, the pocket passer. Manny Wilkins looked really good against bad defenses. Then the second he played a good one, didn't look that good. Then he had a terrible injury, which you hate to see. But obviously an Achilles injury like that, now you have to question if he comes back, is he still going to have that same running ability? When his passing game already wasn't all that great. Again, 73 passer rating is bad. Brandon Silvers 128. And I was nuts. I didn't even include the playoff stats, but we all know Silvers thoroughly outplayed Duggan in the playoff game to the point where there are people who legitimately believe if Silvers played that whole game, they would have beaten DC. As I've said before, I think it would have made it a one-score game, but they still would have lost. But there was a chance. Whereas Duggan didn't have one. Yes, Duggan and Wilkins both put up great stats on the ground, especially Duggan's 299. That's fantastic. But through the air, they were significantly worse quarterbacks. Even though Wilkins still had that 65 completion percentage, which is a really solid number, it's not the 70-plus that Silvers had, and obviously the yards per pass were pretty weak. And so when you're seeing a 6.3 and a 7.2 yards per pass versus an 11, I mean, come on, man. TD interception ratio, 4.413, bad numbers. Yes, if you include rushing, it's 9-4, as well as 3-3, but had the fumbles lost, and it gets worse as well. The bottom line is, Max Duggan and Manny Wilkins are both massively disappointing. I've seen some people suggest that Max Duggan getting released is not because they don't want to bring him back, but it's because of, they're just letting him sign somewhere else. I don't know if I buy that. I've said it before, and I think a lot of people said it. You can understand bringing back Cordero because injuries really hampered him being able to play. But Silvers is the only one of the 3 that played that should be back. None of the other 2 should. Neither Duggan or Manny should be back. They did not play well enough to deserve to come back. And again, I hate to say that for Manny Wilkins because he had the awful injury. But from a pure football perspective, as let's say a GM or a head coach, why would you want to bring back 2 guys that you know aren't going to win you games? If anything, they're going to lose you games. Max Duggan had a couple of really good games and a couple of really bad ones. Insanely inconsistent. You know else is insanely inconsistent? Quentin Dormade. You know what a big reason why the Brahmins didn't win it all last year was? Inconsistent Quentin Dormade. You know what a big reason why he didn't make the roster for the Showboats was? Inconsistent. And so when you see a guy like that, like Max Duggan, there's a reason why you don't want to bring him back. The dual threat QB room for the Battlehawks, hugely disappointing. Number 2 is the attendance TV ratings. I don't want to spend too much time on this because this is like being a dead horse, but if we're doing a disappointment video, it is not an objective being fair if I'm not including this. These are both disappointments. Now, obviously attendance is every team minus Michigan. Michigan, congrats, they went up in attendance, talked about it a lot, insanely good growth. Every other team went down. The only other team I would say that wasn't a disappointment was San Antonio and actually DC. I do think both those teams actually were solid. As I said before, DC in 2024, their attendance numbers were very much announced, not actual, whereas 2025 was, okay, they legit had those people in the seats. And San Antonio, they were awful. They were statistically the worst team in this era of spring football history, and they still averaged 11K. Even if you get rid of the 14K opener, they still averaged 10K. Really impressive. Gotta be, honest, that's solid. St. Louis still went down in attendance. Yes, they ended up having an extra 2 home games, the playoff game, and then the extra home game because of San Antonio. Yes, they had the game that went against 2 other St. Louis games. Still hit under 30,000, still another drop. Memphis, yikes. Houston, yikes. Birmingham and Arlington, still disappointing. Weren't as bad as I think other people made it out to be, but still disappointing. And the TV ratings, every network went down, right? ESPN was really sad. The only game that actually did well was the FS1 game that hit that 500,000 mark. Every other game was a disappointment in terms of the TV ratings. So I had to put this on here, but again, it's like beating a dead horse. Hopefully, Rapola ends up fixing a lot of this stuff, especially the TV front, but we'll see. That's number 2. And number 1 is the San Antonio Brahmas. Is a single soul shocked by this? Seriously, are any of you watching this video shocked this is number 1? You are talking about the reigning XFL champions, who not only finished as the worst team record-wise, but broke the record for worst point differential in this era of spring football. They were worse than the 2022 Maulers. They were worse than the Vipers or Guardians in 2023's XFL. They were worse than the Showboats last year. They were awful. I mean, my God. You eliminate the 2 games out against DC, they virtually never had a good offensive performance. They had like 1 good game. The game against Memphis was the ultimate proof. If you remember, that game was awful. I mean, you just had one of the most... Kevin Hogan was looking actually solid, and then the Memphis game happened. And he was running, and he threw a ball like 3 yards in front of him directly to a Memphis defender that was right in front of him. That play really showed and was a good synopsis of this season. It was a disaster. I still believe Payne Mardi deserves another shot because of just how awful the whole situation was. Because again, the whole AJ Smith thing, depending on who you believe, it's either AJ Smith got royally screwed over because the GM and even Wade both wanted to do everything against him, or it's AJ Smith was insanely entitled, believed he was better than everybody, and it failed. Either way, even if you do that, there's three stories. There's his side, her side, and the truth, right? Black, white, and gray. Even if you do the gray, it still looks bad. Because you have a GM that actively went against bringing in AJ McCarron because Kellen Mond was a hometown guy. Yeah, let's not bring in a guy who is still one of the best quarterbacks in the league for Kellen Mond. Yeah, that really worked out. Then, of course, just the whole decision with how the Wade Phillips situation was handled with his health. Should have been more transparent, more open of like, okay, well, he's really not going to be here, instead of, oh, he might be, he was there, wasn't there. He had like the one game where he's in the booth, then he had the one game where he was on the sideline, then he was gone. I mean, you're talking about a team that had a great defense, one of the best, if not the best in the league last year. I think the Battlehawks of the Guard might be better, but the, at worst, second best defense in the league last year. What were they this year? Dead last. Almost 20 more points given up than any other team, and their yards per game, they were the only team over 320. They were one of only like 2 teams over 300. They were the worst defense in the league, and even offense. I'm being nice, not showing. Their offensive yardage stats was also the worst in the league. This team was terrible. Anthony McFarland took a step back. Really, you had your linebacking duo of like Williams and Beckett and like a couple other guys. But for the most part, aside from about maybe 3 or 4 players, the entire roster either grossly underperformed, were just outright bad, or just some other negative adjective. That's the bottom line. This team was a colossal failure and was a massive disappointment. Even more so than the Showboats, because at least the Showboats was them, I'm talking about last year's Showboats, were them essentially trying to build a quote-unquote super team. As I mentioned before, their on paper starting offense was insane. It just didn't work out. This was a team that really didn't change that much from last year to this year. Yes, they got a new quarterback, but most people viewed it as a potential upgrade. I said it was either going to be a boom or a bust because your backups were, oh my God, Jarrett Garantano and Kevin Hogan, and that really worked out for them. But the bottom line is, the rest of the roster was very similar. A lot of the same receivers. You didn't have Cody Latimer, but you still had a lot of the same receivers, a lot of the same running backs, like McFarland. You had a lot of the same defense, and your team just fell off a cliff. It was awful, abysmal, definitely the biggest disappointment of the 2025 UFL season. But overall, that'll do it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you're notified when I upload any videos. I still try to upload at least 2 videos a week during the off season, doing 1 video a week talking about former UFL, USL, XFL players in the NFL, as well as 1 other video. And think about becoming a community member for as low as 99 cents a month. You get an exclusive monthly video, team emojis to use in the comment section, either regular comments or live streams, as well as a few other benefits. And as always, guys, have a great night.